In the year 10191, mankind has evolved so much that it has revealed many secrets of the universe. Now he is also capable of traveling from one planet to another. Each planet is a separate nation, but they are all part of a single empire, led by Emperor Shaddam Corrino of the Padishah Empire. Each planet has its own emperor, who carries out the orders of Emperor Shaddam. One such planet is Arrakis. It is a harsh desert planet that is the only source of a rare spice called melange. It is a rare and valuable substance that increases human vitality. Without this, the journey of the infinite universe is impossible, which is why this substance is a precious element of the entire universe. Despite its harsh conditions, Arrakis is considered the most valuable planet in the known universe, and all the noble houses seek to rule it. The native inhabitants of Arrakis are called the Fremen. His eyes have turned a distinctive blue due to prolonged exposure to melange. A Fremen woman named Chani explains that since before she was born, the planet has been ruled by the cruel Harkonnens, who are under the control of Emperor Shaddam. House Harkonnen is cruel to the natives of Arrakis, but the poor natives cannot fight House Harkonnen's army. But one day, the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV ordered the Harkonnens to leave Arrakis. No one understood why the Emperor chose this path, and who would be his next dictator. The scene changes, and we are shown a planet called Caladan, which is ruled by Leto Atreides. Prince Paul Atreides is having breakfast with his mother Jessica, a member of the semi-religious sect of the Bene Gesserit. Jessica is trying to teach her son the special powers of her sect. This is a special organization whose members have advanced physical and mental abilities, with the help of which they can control the mind of any human being. Paul often has dreams and can see the future. Sometime later, Paul and his father, Duke Leto, meet an imperial messenger, bringing orders from the Emperor. The Emperor, who has recently driven House Harkonnen from Arrakis, wants Atreides to take Harkonnen's place. He wants Leto and his soldiers to be in charge of mining spice from Arrakis. Duke Leto respectfully follows the Emperor's orders and seals the deal with his ring. After some time, Paul meets Duncan, the swordsman of House Atreides, their only brave soldier, and also Paul's close friend. Paul's worried about him, and wants to accompany him to Arrakis, as he saw Duncan in a dream with the Fremen people on Arrakis, and also saw him die in battle. But Duncan dismisses it as just a dream, and tells Paul that he is not going to die. Paul refuses to give up and talks to his father about going with Duncan, but Leto also refuses and tells him that you will go with us, after a few weeks like the others. Leto explains that they will face political dangers once they set foot on Arrakis, so he wants Paul to stay with him. Leto explains that his goal is not to become rich by using the spice. Instead, he wants to make friends with the people of Arrakis. He intends to treat the Fremen with dignity, unlike the former Duke Harkonnen, in order to harness the desert power of Arrakis for himself and defeat the Emperor. Later, Paul trains in swordsmanship with War Master Gurney of House Atreides. They have a wrist device that creates a layer of protective force around his body. Gurney warns him of how cruel the Harkonnen are, so Paul must prepare for battle. Meanwhile, in Gedi Prime, at the home of Harkonnen, the former ruler of Arrakis, Rabban visits his uncle Baron Harkonnen and tells him that all their ships have left Arrakis. Enraged, he cries out why the Emperor would do this to them, but is surprised to find that the Baron and his right-hand man Peter are actually planning the Atreides' downfall, because they are jealous of his rising popularity. Back in Caladan, Jessica wakes Paul in the middle of the night because Jessica's mentor, Gaius Helen Mohiam, wants to meet Paul, but before that, Dr. Wellington Yu examined Paul. Mohiam makes Paul undergo Gom Jabbar's test using a poisonous needle and a pain-inducing box to evaluate his character, which he passes with great effort. Mohiam is searching for a messiah who has the ability to save Arrakis from the exploitation of spice. As she leaves, she warns Jessica that if Paul is the one she is looking for, he has a very long way to go and is about to burn in the fire. When Mohiam is gone, Paul asks his mother what Mohiam means. Jessica explains that the Bene Gesserit have spent hundreds of years in a selective breeding program to produce a unique mind that can see both the past and the future. The next day, Leto, Paul, Jessica, and their soldiers leave for Arrakis and land on the planet. They are greeted by cheers from the Fremen, and Paul wonders what they are saying, so Jessica explains that they are calling him Messiah in their own language. However, Paul believes that this is just a superstition. Jessica hires Shadout Mapes, a Fremen servant. Mapes sees Jessica and Paul as fulfilling Lisan al-Gab and gives Jessica a dagger made from the tooth of Shai-Hulud. Paul is in his chamber learning about a giant sandworm found on Arrakis, known to the Fremen as Shai-Hulud. To stay safe from this, the Fremen walk in irregular motions across the sand. Then, an attempt is made to kill Paul with a predator drone, but he survives. Soon after the guards are alerted, upon investigation, they discover that a Harkonnen was hiding inside the wall, waiting for the right moment to attack. Meanwhile, Mohim meets the Baron. She came with orders from the Emperor, who wants the Harkonnen to attack Arrakis. However, Mohim wants Jessica and her son to be left alive. The Baron promises not to harm them, but after she leaves, he tells Peter that not a single Atreides should survive. Leto surveys his new domain, and finds that the Harkonnens have damaged much of the essential infrastructure. They decide to take the issue to the Imperial Arbiter of the Transition, an ecologist named Lith Kynes, who has lived on Arrakis for years. Duncan returns after staying with the Freemans for several weeks. He tells Leto that the Fremen are unique fighters who live in communities called Sieches, in caves beneath the desert. Duncan also brings along the Freeman leader, Stilgar, who has come to meet Leto. Stilgar demands that people from the outside world not leave the city except to extract spice. Leto refused, but insisted that as long as he was king, his people would not be harmed. Leto wants to inspect the spice fields, and Lith Kynes is accompanying him. Before takeoff, she inspects their still suit, which recycles sweat and urine from a person's body and turns it into drinking water. Investigation revealed that even after wearing the suit for the first time, Paul had fitted his still suit in the Fremen manner, which reminds him of a prophecy that states that their Messiah, despite being from another country, would know their ways of life. Soon after, they all go to inspect the spice fields. Lith Kynes explains that sandworms travel deep but are attracted by noise and vibration. Then they saw a huge insect moving straight towards the sandcrawler. Lith Kynes immediately calls a flying carryall to get the sandcrawler off the ground, but unfortunately, due to a malfunction, the carryall fails to lift the crawler. It turned out that there were 21 people in the crawler, and there were no other carryalls nearby. So Leto ordered all the planes to land to save the people. While escorting people out of the sandcrawler, Paul was exposed to a large amount of spice, causing him to feel dizzy and fall to the ground. Leto is about to take off when they realize Paul is not on board. Luckily, Gurney finds him in the flying sand, and the two quickly run toward the plane. They all take flight before the insect swallows them. Then the surface of the sand begins to break, and a worm with a huge mouth comes out, swallowing the machine. When Paul returns home and the doctor examines him, the doctor diagnoses it as an allergy. However, Paul tells Jessica that it's not an allergy. He says he saw a Fremen girl, which he doesn't understand. He also tells Jessica that she is pregnant. Hearing this, Jessica is also surprised because she learned about her pregnancy a few weeks ago. Meanwhile, on the planet Salusa Secundus, a battalion is raised with the intention of killing Leto and his family and attacking the planet Arrakis. Back on Arrakis, the doctor leaves a drug in Paul's room that will render him unconscious, but Paul knows nothing about it. The doctor also leaves drugs for Jessica and Leto, which Jessica takes, but Leto does not take. After a few moments, an unknown person enters a chamber and shoots all the guards. After this, he lowers the shield at the base. When Leto wakes up, he senses something is wrong and goes to investigate, where he discovers a dead body. He tries to call security but gets no response. He activates his protective shield and examines the dead body. He finds a servant holding a dagger in his chest. Just then, a poison dart penetrates Leto's shield and enters his body, and he becomes unconscious. Just then, a man appears who is none other than Dr. Yue. As the Harkonnen army, aided by Imperial Sardaukar soldiers, begins their attack, Gurney awakens and leads a counterattack. Due to a surprise attack by the Harkonnen troops and Sardaukar, the Atreides troops failed to retaliate and were soon captured. Yue tells Leto that he has no other choice, as the Harkonnens have taken his wife captive. He takes Leto's ring for Paul and replaces one of Leto's teeth with a poison capsule, telling him that he can use it to kill the Baron, but also reminding him that when he exhales, it will be his last breath. Duncan kills several of the warlords and tries to rescue Paul and Jessica, but finds that they are already gone. Then he takes a plane and destroys several enemy ships. Meanwhile, we see that Jessica and Paul have been kidnapped and are being brought on a plane. Jessica is gagged and cannot use her powers, so she tells Paul to use her voice to subdue the soldiers. Paul is not completely proficient in his Bene Gesserit abilities, but he still tries and fails. The soldiers open the plane door and decide to throw Paul out. A desperate Jessica prompts Paul to use the correct pitch. Concentrating, Paul uses the voice again, and this time it works. At Paul's request, Jessica's mouth is opened, and she uses her powers to overpower the soldiers and kill them. Paul and Jessica watch the destruction of Arrakis from a distance, but are unable to do anything, even as their plane malfunctions. Paul finds a frame kit left by the doctor, and they set up a tent in the desert and take refuge. Meanwhile, Yue meets with Baron Harkonnen and demands that the Baron release his wife as per the deal. The Baron keeps his promise that Yue will be reunited with his wife and then slits her throat. He then goes to Leto, who is now paralyzed and unable to do anything. The Baron tells him that your son and your wife are dead, and he will wipe out the Atreides dynasty. Leto starts whispering something, which the Baron activates his protective shield and leans in to hear. Then Leto crushes the poisonous tooth and releases poisonous gas on it, due to which all the soldiers present in the room die in a moment, while some come out and close the door. In the desert, Paul finds his father's ring along with a note from Yue, and the two realize that Leto is no more. Duncan meets with Kynes and asks for his help in finding Paul and Jessica. Back at the Baron's castle, soldiers come to collect the bodies, and they find the Baron alive, who, seriously injured, had already activated his body shields and used his anti-gravity suspensor to float in the air. In the desert, Paul comes in contact with Spice and sees Chani, who shows him a big battle in which Paul is fighting like a great warrior and has blue eyes. He sees himself killing millions of people. Paul is horrified by what he sees and blames his mother and the Bene Gesserit. But eventually, his mother consoles him and reminds him that you are the son of the great Emperor Leto Atreides. After some time, they hear signs of someone arriving, and they come out of the tent. At that time, a plane lands there, which was Duncan. He kneels in front of Paul and calls him Lord Duke. They all come to an abandoned terraforming station, where they will survive the storm. However, soon they are found by Sardaukar army, which attacks them. Duncan sacrifices himself and closes the door so Paul and Jessica can escape with Kynes. But soon, Sardaukar's army thrusts a sword into his chest. Kynes tells Paul and Jessica that they need to leave immediately because the soldiers are breaking down the door. She instructs them to take a plane and head south, searching for the Freeman. She can't accompany them on the plane as there are only 2 seats available. Instead, she plans to board another plane from a different station. Paul and Jessica escape on a plane, while Kynes sets up a thumper with the intention of summoning a sandworm and boarding it. But Sardaukar's soldiers fatally wound him. Before they can deliver the killing blow, Kynes creates a rhythmic vibration on the sand, causing a sandworm to appear and swallow them all. Paul sees that 3 enemy planes are chasing him, and then the enemy fires missiles at Paul's plane, to avoid which Paul takes his plane inside the storm, due to which the missiles miss their target and are destroyed in the air. However, the storm begins to damage the plane. Meanwhile, we see the Baron, who is being treated. Robin tells him that they chased Jessica and Paul into the storm. The winds were 800 kilometers per hour, and no one can survive in such a storm. Robin tells him that he is sure they are dead. The Baron orders the spice harvesting to begin, and all the freemen to be killed. On the other hand, Paul and Jessica crash in the desert, although they were safe. After wearing stillsuits, both of them start searching for freemen. When they stop for a rest, Paul sees a vision of Chani, in which she tells him that he must face his fear. In the vision, he also sees another Fremen, who tells him that Paul has yet to, there is a lot to learn. Using Duncan's paracompass, Paul estimates the correct direction, and the two begin walking in that direction. However, their actions attract the sandworms, and they run towards some nearby rocks. The sandworm stops, seemingly looking at Paul for a few seconds, then a thumper sound attracts him, and he walks away. Then he sees that he is surrounded by a group of freemen, including Stilgar, whom Paul knows, because he has met him. A freeman named Jameis wants to kill Jessica and Paul and rob them, but Stilgar tells them that no one will touch them. Jessica asks for their help in returning to Caladan, and says they will be rewarded handsomely, but Stilgar dismisses any reward he offers as useless. Stilgar explains that Paul is young and can learn their ways, but Jessica is too old and cannot come with them. The Fremen immediately attack, but Jessica is a great warrior and holds off Stilgar with a knife to his throat. Stilgar realizes that Jessica is a Bene Gesserit and relents. He decides to take them both to Sikh, but Jameis objects and challenges Jessica to a duel. Stilgar says that Jameis cannot challenge a priest, then tells him who will fight in his stead. Hearing this, Paul agrees to stand up as his mother's champion. Chani, who was part of the group, takes pity on Paul. She believes he will die at the hands of Jameis, and she wants Paul to die with dignity. She gives him her krisk knife, a dagger made from the teeth of sandworms. In the duel, Paul overpowered Jameis. He repeatedly held a knife to his throat and demanded he bow. Stilgar informs her that the Fremen never give up, and the only outcome is death, while Jessica says that Paul has never killed anyone before. Reluctantly, Paul kills Jameis. Satisfied, Stilgar says that Paul is now one of them, while Jessica insists that Paul needs to get off the planet. However, Paul disagrees, saying that his father did not come to Arrakis for spices or wealth, but for the power of the Fremen. He says that his own path leads into the desert. If Fremen allows, he would like to go with them. As the group heads into the desert, Paul and Jessica see a Fremen riding a sandworm using a hook. Chani then tells Paul that this is only the beginning.